was going to fill the time because Flavia told me I have to tell a story. So let me tell just a brief story before I hand it over. For those of you that don't know, my background is in philosophy and international business, and I work a lot with the local Chamber of Commerce. And when I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, I was inspired to talk about how a doohickey gets to your door. So let's say you go online, you go on Amazon or whatever, and you see that $10 thing. You're like, oh my God, that's the greatest $10 random item I've ever seen. And you press buy. That little item goes from a manufacturing plant onto probably a pickup truck to go to a small distribution center. And then from the small distribution center, it gets loaded onto a large pickup truck and goes to a large distribution center, which then goes to the port. And then from the port, it gets loaded onto a small truck that gets loaded onto a container, which gets loaded onto a ship, and then it crosses the ocean. And then it gets dropped off at another port, and then it gets loaded onto a big truck to go to a large distribution center, to go to a small distribution center, to go to another small distribution center, to get onto a small truck to end up at your door. So that $10 doohickey took a ride not only across the ocean, but on 7 or 8 different modes of transportation. And so I encourage people when we're thinking about consumption, we're shifting to more toward compost, but when you think of consumption, remember to ask yourself, is that $10 doohickey worth 7 trucks and a boat? So thank you, Flavia, for inspiring me to give that little anecdote, and I will turn it over to you now, because everyone here they want to hear you, and they want to hear about compost. So.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, so if my voice craps out, I still have a little bit of a cough, but I'm not contagious because it happened over Labor Day. And I have cough drops, emergency supply only. And I appreciate what Brian said about 9 years ago, we would have had this place more packed than it is tonight. And my son assured me that eventually the place will get packed again. And so I think with Ashland Climate Collaborative up and running and the joy that they add, that we're gonna get there in Ashland. And I'm looking forward to having this mean something to a lot of people. And so I want to talk to about this list. I'll go over later, but these are the groups that I'm affiliated with locally. And I must have been a little girl that had to set up all her dolls wherever she went, because I had brought my tabling materials with me. And, it just makes me feel more at home. This is what I am hanging out with every Tuesday at the growers market. And I also wanted to say that there is a sign-up sheet if you're interested in community compost and staying in touch with us and with SOCAN. There's a sign-up sheet. Some of you came in a little bit early before we had it set up. So please sign up. We want to send out quarterly newsletters from Southern Oregon Food Solutions and also SOCAN's monthly newsletter as well. So, all right, we're going to try this. Oh, nope, that's the other way. There we go. So I just want to take a minute to go over our current local food system. So in my school days, I learned that the way we do things in the United States is specialization. So everybody does one little repetitive piece of the puzzle. So on the left side is our current food system. So big ag and distribution centers, as Daniel said, and all this transportation over to the market, shopping cart, it's my choice, and finally to your refrigerator, okay? And then on the right is a resilient food system. Now, the first thing you notice is it's not really a directional thing. You go different places to different things. And so what this is called is foraging, because if this is out, you go here. If this is out, you go here. If this is out, you go there. And what this does is we don't develop one specialized skill. We become resourceful people at figuring out how to get our food. Now, if the big earthquake happens or we have a food supply chain interruption like we did at the end of the pandemic, it's going to be important to develop these kinds of skills so that you're not only limited to the shelves at the grocery stores, which we saw became empty sometimes during the pandemic. So I just wanted to give you that comparison. And even though, we may not be very skilled at growing our own food, we may have spent hundreds of dollars in seeds and plants and water and everything and come out with 68 cents worth of vegetables at the end of the season. But hey, at least you know how to grow things. And that is an important skill, and you might need it at different times. So regardless of those two systems, both things will end up here eventually, which is the landfill. And this is the thing that alerted me at first to the importance of our food system, is the methane that food causes in landfill is much more potent than just regular CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. So the first 20 years that methane is out in our atmosphere, it's way worse. And so this is reducing the methane coming out of our landfills is something that's very much within our wheelhouse. We can do it, and it would have very immediate, significant impacts if we can. So, so just to sum up our current food system, when we waste food, we're wasting the water it took to grow it, the land it took to grow it on, the energy, the labor, and the capital, and not to mention the transportation to move it all over the place. So, so this is why we're talking about food waste and composting. It's not just about composting. It's about making our food system more efficient. So I wanted to tie in what Brian was talking about, Ashland's Climate and Energy Action Plan, what compost has to do with it. So in the compost materials section, if you were to read through this, these are the elements that compost can impact, increase composting activity. And the cross-cutting strategies are strategies that would make a difference in all the elements of the Climate Energy Action Plan, not just consumption. So education, empowering, integrating climate considerations, and engaging with governments and organizations. So this is like the overall things that if we get there, these will really come in handy. So I wanted to focus on some of the elements specifically, and what these colored squares means. MI means mitigation, and AD means adaptation. So with these consumption materials elements, you could see where they're going to have the most impact. And I'll get to the community gardening area more or less closer to the end. But I also wanted to talk about the nonprofit organizations to promote the purchase of local food and products. So, for example, we're partnering with Rogue Valley Food System Network, which is the network of farms, restaurants, and wineries in our area. And we're tabling right next to Rogue Valley Growers Market because we figured it would encourage people to go shopping at the growers market if they're also coming to drop off their food scraps. So, and for collaboration, we have over 100 people contributing their food scraps. We're collecting over 700 pounds a week, every week. And so this is an example of collaborating in the community. And then education is an example. This tonight is an example of what we're doing in the tabling that I do every week. So I think with community compost, that is a good process to support if you want to do something to help Ashland reach its climate goals. And then these are just some others. These are the cross-cutting strategies here, and also some more consumption materials management. So I just wanted to give you these examples, and also if you sign up, you might get a soft copy of all these slides, which would be really good. And I think the presentation is going to be available on the SOCAN website too. So then next I wanted to give you an example of a great local food system. And so this is more or less how we're going to approach the rest of this subject matter. I want to talk about our specific local food system, and I want to talk about Rogue Valley Food System Network conducted a community food assessment, and they just completed it at the beginning of this year. And then I want to talk about, what this means to you as an individual. So the thing I wanted to point out, this is just a beautiful drawing to me, and if you were to look at it really closely, it's got all the stuff that really makes me happy and excited. Love, justice, respect, stewardship, experiment, environment, diversity, healthy and just, advocacy, learning, increased demand, increased supply. So if we were to build our local food system with these kinds of values, we would be a more resilient local community throughout the Rogue Valley. And an example, this is Pie Ranch. This is out at Atascadero, which is near Half Moon Bay in California. And an example of their resiliency, in 2020, the wildfires hit this ranch and it burned down their main barn, which was 157 years old. So that was like the heart of the farm. And then in 2023, they had the horrible rains come through, like the atmospheric rivers, wiping out all kinds of crops and everything. And it was the same year that they had the mass shooting. It didn't happen on this farm, but it happened in their Half Moon Bay community. And it was really quite shattering to watch that community try and recover from that. So the reason why I'm showing you this, not that we're going to go to California, but these are ideals that I would like to see us strive for in our local food system. So this is a diagram, very clean little diagram of the different stages, and it's very common sense. You could read it for yourself, the production, the distribution, consumption, and then recovery. But the point is in the middle, that a sustainable food system integrates the elements so it would kind of blur everything together to enhance environmental, economic, social, and nutritional health for all. So what does that mean? That means that instead of, well, I did my part, just shove it to the next step, you're working together and you're making a better outcome overall because you're working together. And so where you come in is that everybody is connected to their family, to their neighbors, to their community, and connections are like library cards. I don't use my library card very often, confession, but if I did, I would have access to all these different resources that the library has to offer. And so the other point I want to make about the U's is that there's so many out here, right? There's 233,000 people in Jackson County. And if we were all thinking about our local food system and how to make it better, we would have more of an impact. And the last thing is mindfulness matters too. And my point about that, I deliberated taking that out or leaving it in, is that you could do stuff and not really pay attention to what you're doing and not really thinking about the impact. For instance, in my career, every day I would head off to work, stop at Winchell's, and buy a styrofoam cup full of coffee with my bran muffin. And that was my routine for years. I never paid attention to what the impact of my styrofoam cups were and that they're all still here. So paying attention is a good tip. So if I had a magic wand, I would observe that not too many people are truly integrating themselves into our local food system, and that we're missing an opportunity to have an economic community that thrives in our surrounding agricultural landscape. For instance, and I'm sorry that my voice is cracking, it gets dry. And I would say that when I was growing up in Orange County, near Disneyland, we would go every weekend from Fullerton to Huntington Beach, and we'd pass through Garden Grove. And all acres and acres of farmland all over the place. Now it's just one big giant subdivision and strip mall after the other. So I would like to keep our beautiful landscape the way it is. And each of us has the tiniest of magic wands, but if we all work together, it wouldn't be so tiny. And then the last point I want to make with this slide is that it was 10 years before Rogue Valley Food System Network did a food assessment. And so since then, we've had the Alameda fire, we've had COVID, we've had drought, and we've had increased food insecurity. So it's important to take another assessment. So what they did was they came up with 4 5-year strategy goals. And so I'm just going to list them here. And if you want to know more, you can find out more about Rogue Valley Food System Network. And I'm part of the working groups that is addressing one of these goals, and I'll let you figure out which one. But the first one is ensure health access to healthy food for all, because we have more food insecurity, because as you may or may not know, the U.S. decided to just stop collecting data on food insecurity nationally, so we won't have that kind of national reporting anymore. And then the second goal is to invest in a thriving local food and farm economy. So that means supporting local farmers, that means building a supply of local food, but also building the demand. That was also back in the Pie Ranch diagram, building supply and building demand. Oh, of your own water. Thank you. Bless you. Because I guess I started sounding like, no, you can just, okay. I probably started sounding like nails on a chalkboard. No, yeah. So anyway, I was talking about supporting local farmers, and then support the food system entrepreneurs and create careers in agriculture and food, which would be great. I was told by a farmer this year out in Applegate Valley that they just need more farmers. They've got enough land, they need more experienced farmers. And what farmers are agronomists. So they're specialists in soil science, hydrology, botany to grow a piece of food, and also the weather patterns. So they bring a really rich skill set to what they do. And then the third goal is to protect soil and water health, and build healthy soils and preserve land for food production. And that's really important because Oregon has laws to protect agricultural land, but over the years, they've been chipping away. And there are advocacy groups like 1,000 Friends of Oregon, and but it's not a fight that we can just take for granted. And as soon as somebody says, I'm done farming, and if they choose to sell to the next condo developer, there's less and less to stop them. So, and the fourth goal is reduce food waste and related solid waste. So here is where I get more involved. Prevent wasted food, support the safe rescue and redistribution of food to feed people in need, increase access to composting, and engage and educate our community about food waste. So what I wanted to say, for Community Compost Coalition, we're helping to accomplish several of those goals. We're supporting local farms, we're building up soil health, and that will improve water quality because composting decreases the farmer's need for artificial fertilizers, which becomes the runoff in our water systems. And healthy soil needs less water, so it helps with water conservation as well. And then the public outreach to prevent food waste is also needed because our habits around food have grown over a lifetime. And it is, unless you live by yourself, it's kind of hard to change your internal household habits. So it's imperative to get some support from the community for that as well. So I just wanted to make this point that food waste happens at every stage in the food system process. And so each entity that's participating in this food system needs to have a strategy, not just at the end, not just at, in the household, but each stage of the process has to have a strategy for what they do, because food waste is spinning off at every stage. And then I wanted to give this diagram. The State Department of Environmental Quality helped me design this pyramid, because these are their little characters here. And they say the most effective way to address food waste is prevention, then donation, and then if you can't do anything else, then to compost it. And my metaphor is like aluminum cans. Everybody is now getting in the habit of recycling those aluminum cans because it's very recyclable, and so is food. And so if we just start thinking of food scraps not as trash, but just recycled materials, we'll be that much further along. So I just wanted to say these are things that you can do to help with our food system. Buy local, get comfortable. In other words, if you go to the growers market every week, pretty soon you're going to start to know the different vendors, and you're going to start to become familiar with what's in season. And I had no idea, for instance, this year I found out that everybody gets their plant starts at the growers market, like in March. It's crazy. And then a few weeks ago, it was all about the peaches. There were lines going all around for the peaches. So it's really kind of a nice local thing to do. And then you could follow best food management practices to save money and prevent waste. So I wrote on the whiteboard over there, you could see ashlandoregon.gov/580/take climate action. They have a lot of good tips for reducing food waste and the other tips, and the materials that are on the table here will also help reducing your carbon footprint and reducing food waste. And then I wanted to say, buy food that doesn't use artificial elements. I know that a lot of people just say eat organic, but if it's certified organic, it's going to be a little bit pricier. But if you go to the growers market and they say, oh, we don't use chemicals, we just can't afford to certify, well, that's a bargain. And you're going to be healthier internally as well. And then eat less meat. So this is actually straight out of the Climate Energy Action Plan for Ashland. Is one way to reduce your climate footprint is to eat less meat. Now, I still eat meat in my household. I just don't eat as much as I did, 12 years ago. And we care very much about where we get our meat from and how the meat is, how the cows are raised. So going on the farm tour every year in July is something I really enjoy, and affiliate with active groups. So that's why I listed all those local groups that I'm affiliated with now. That's a suggestion for you to choose one of those groups that resonate with you. It won't ring every bell, but and then help increase the access to food with time or money. So like the Green Bag Project or the local community food bank or Uncle Food's Diner on Tuesday nights or the Monday Meals people, they could all use help because all of the federal funding for food aid was cut too. And then put food waste to good use with composting, either do it yourself or use one of our services. So with that, since I am not an expert at composting myself, I use a collection service so that I don't fight with my boyfriend over how to compost correctly. So I'm going to let Bob tell you about composting at home. So the big one is forward.
Mike?
What?
I'm not even sure I need this. Can you guys hear me okay?
We're recording, so if you.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry about that, all right. Gotta face it towards you too, huh, okay. Okay, where do we wanna start? Try this, face it towards you, how's that? Okay, all right. So, I was told to tell you a little bit about myself first here. I was involved starting a group called Southern Oregon Master Recyclers in Action a number of years ago. One of the things we do is we advocate for zero waste. In fact, the mission of our group is to create, promote, implement projects that support the practice of zero waste. And whatever zero waste means to you, to us, it basically means what's called a circular economy today, which is basically what means everything we make at some point is going to be able to be reused, recycled, repurposed, whatever, but it's not going to go into a landfill. In fact, the idea is to get rid of landfills entirely. We work on a number of different projects. I won't get into all the things we're thinking about, but what we have done, a number of years ago, we started working with Recology, our local waste hauler, to find out why we couldn't recycle mattresses. We all see mattresses sitting on the side of the road, and at the time I had a wonderful compatriot named Louise Shawkat, who was a SOCAN member. Brian mentioned her earlier. And together we spent almost 3.5 years working with Recology. I read an article about some group over in Klamath Falls that had just gotten a DEQ grant to buy a metal baler. And I was interested in what this was about. We looked into it. Turns out it was a nonprofit organization that was a make work group that was taking mattresses apart and recycling all the components. And once a week, they baled up all the box springs and drove them over the hill to Schnitzer Steel in White City. And that same truck went back over the hill empty. So we went to Recology and said, hey, this is like a no-brainer, right? They can take mattresses back over the hill and recycle them. Well, if you're familiar with dealing with big corporations, it took them another 1.5 years of vetting this small little group before they finally approved it. Long story short, since that time, we have now recycled like over 7,000 mattresses. And these are all mattresses that were going to go into the landfill. And now, we started out, we were 3 years ahead of the state because the state has now mandated mattress recycling. And so now when you buy a mattress, just like our bottle bill, when you buy a mattress now, there's going to be a fee attached to that mattress that's going to cover the cost of recycling it. But anyway, our main claim to fame these days, we also have a program called Lend Me a Plate. When Brian was talking about his daughter Hannah, she borrowed all the plates and everything for her wedding. Our first borrower was Jeff Golden, actually, for his wedding. And what we do is we have a collection of durable, reusable plates and, well, just about everything you can think of you need for an event instead of using disposables. And so we now have been going on about 6-7 years. Our biggest year was right before COVID, where we loaned out over 50,000 items. And we're going strong right now. We're busier than ever right now, and things we've kind of rebuilt since COVID. And so, yeah, so it's called Lend Me a Plate. I left a lot of information on the table when you leave. You can check it out. It's a simple process. Just go online. It'll tell you what we have, and you can borrow everything, and somebody will help you load your car and all that kind of stuff. But okay. Have any of you read the book? It's a little sweet book called Braiding Sweetgrass. Good. Well, it's a special little book. you can confirm this if you like, because it's written by a Native American woman who's also a scientist, and it's told from a Native American perspective. And one of the themes of the book, and this kind of ties in with what Flavia was talking about in terms of why we should compost. And one of the main themes of the book is reciprocity. And if we're going to take from the planet, we should be giving something back. And one very small thing we can do is compost our waste. And so that we're going to finally get around to talking about the actual composting now. So we live in a time where increasingly we're dealing with more and more inorganic material. I just heard the term inorganic information the other day also, which is another interesting term. Tonight we're only going to talk about organics, okay? Anything that's organic or natural that includes us is compostable, right? So if we put it out there long enough with a little bit of water and a little bit of air, we're going to break down, return to the earth. So the thing I like about composting is it's flexible. It isn't one of those things that has to be done any one way. You know, we're all different. We all have different habits, lives, personalities, the amount of food waste, all the different kinds of things you need. There's no fixed formula. I put a little thing on the board there, really funky looking sign, but that's the basic formula for making compost. And it's pretty darn simple. There's hundreds of variations. And some people live in mobile homes and apartments. Some people don't have the room for it all, but we all can compost. There's all kinds of varieties and different things available for you. So I tend to be one of those people that approach things, let's see, what's the right word? Kind of a relaxed approach, attitude. I'm not, some people are more exacting. I just like to go with the flow. I'm not going to work too hard at composting. It's just not, I don't need that, something where I'm worried about it not happening. So, so what happens with compost is you can be somebody who wants to get good compost in 3-4 weeks, a month or two. You can if you want to work at it. Me, that's a picture of my 2 bins at home right there. And you can see what it looks like. Short time ago, it was the right-hand bin was full. I just turned it recently. I do it every 6 months. I turn it, and at the end of the second 6 months, a whole year, I have the most beautiful finished compost you could ask for. I brought a sample along with me tonight. I know it sounds weird, but I consider the stuff beautiful, you know. And I don't have to do anything. I don't have to screen it. I just run my hand through it, and I pick out some of the walnut shells and big chunks of wood and some rocks that got raked in there. I throw everything, all my stuff from my shop. I mean, everything goes in my compost, and it comes out this beautiful. You'll see. Take a look at it. So my point is, you can take a year if you want, or you can try and develop a system that fits, your lifestyle. Most people, I think, try and shoot for something in a couple months, maybe a few months. It all depends on the kind of thing you have, but the most important thing is you have to have all the ingredients, and we'll talk about what goes into it a little bit, and to keep turning it. And so the problem with my system is I only turn it once. And if I'm going to have such a big bin, ideally I'd have a 3rd compost bin. Then I could turn it twice, and it would cook even faster. And I say cook because that's what's going on. So we're talking about mixing. Let's see if we can, I can't see the sign down there, but so basically we're talking about, you need 2 things. We need nitrogen and we need carbon. Those are the essential elements to make compost. And so we're going to talk about what you'd use to get those elements. Let's try and see what's the next one is here. Okay, an example of some commercial bin. We'll get to that later. I used a screen, and as I said, I now get 4 wheelbarrow loads. I'm sorry. I now get 4 wheelbarrow loads of compost. Okay. All right. Yeah. And so what I do now is I'm just finishing a year's worth of compost, and I'm not ready to use it. I'm not going to use it till next spring, so I just put it in a big mound where my squash plants were, and it's going to be there for next spring when I will put a layer of about 3 inches of that compost in my whole garden. And if you want an example, hang on here. If you want an example, a couple of years ago I planted a strawberry bed, and they were doing okay. I can't complain. They were fine, but I decided, that I'll move them somewhere else. Maybe that plot wasn't very good. The area I moved into, I decided to put a lot of compost into that. This last year, I put some netting. I got it designed so there's a net that sits about a foot above the strawberry plants to keep all the birds and critters out. These plants grew through the netting this year. I had strawberries like I've never had before. They look like the ones you buy in the store, those big monster things, but they taste, well, if you remember, the ones you buy in the store these days taste like cardboard. They have no flavor. These are the best strawberries I've ever had, and obviously the correlation between my extra compost and that, has to be the reason. Okay, so nitrogen and carbon. Let's back up here. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So I have one of these buckets on our counter at home, and we fill it pretty much once a week. I usually have a plastic bag in there. I keep my bins pretty far down from our house, and we'll get into critters and all the people who like compost bins. I keep it quite a ways, so once a week I take it down there and dump it in there. But the problem is some of the ingredients that you want for your compost aren't always available. And so over the years, I'm not an expert, but I got to tell you, I've been composting for over 50 years, and I've tried every version of it all, and it's kind of frustrating because it's kind of like tomatoes and lettuce. Why don't they grow at the same time? If they're going to go together. Well, if I need grass and leaves, when I have grass in the spring, I don't have leaves. When I have leaves in the fall, I don't have grass. And so what I try and do, and I'll be doing shortly, is we're going into leaf season here. I drive down B Street every fall, and there's all these people put out their bags of leaves, and last year I think I got about 10 bags of leaves because I know that I have a lot of grass at my house. Like I say, this doesn't apply to everybody, but you have to figure out what you have. And so now I know I have leaves, so when I have grass in the spring, I'm saving some of these leaves so I can add them at the same time I'm adding that grass. So the ratio, which is really, this is one of the more important parts now, is generally somewhere around 3 to 4 parts of carbon, which are the leaves, and there's lots of other things that can make carbon, to 1 part nitrogen. And the nitrogen comes mostly from green waste and food scraps and manure, and we'll go over all the different ingredients later. So carbon's everywhere. If you don't have leaves, you can put shredded newspaper. Okay, where are we going from here? What goes in your compost? Let's see if we got something. I'll back it up 1 second, just show you. So another thing that I don't do, because I was saying earlier that I only have 2 bins and I turn it every 6 months. So you need to get some moisture. Part of the equation is water, and you need to get air in there. And because my bins are big and I don't turn it very often, I'm not getting as much moisture and air into the heart of that bin. So they make these augers. I don't have one. I'm thinking about getting one that you can get it and just turn and open up the middle of your compost so that you can access it to get water and air in there. Okay. That's a good one. There's all different kinds of composting. So the kind we're talking about tonight, basic composting, there's certain things you can't put in, and we'll get into that later on, and mainly it's meat and bones and dairy. But there are other means, and we happen to have a woman with us this evening who specializes in bokashi composting. It's another form of composting that doesn't use air. It's anaerobic. It's a closed system where you inject inoculants, bacteria into the system somehow. Correct me if I'm wrong here. This is not my thing. And so it's a way of firing up the process different than the aerobic one we're talking about here. So I only mention that because it's another alternative. I haven't even seen these slides before. That's good. All right. Yeah. So this is do-it-yourself worms. We'll talk about vermiculture a little bit later on, but growing worms is total fun thing to do. It's easy. It's another way of using up your food scraps. And I'm not going to go into it in detail tonight, but why compost with worms? I wasn't going to get into this tonight. Is that okay?
Well, if you go back a few slides, your slides are all grouped together before we got to Magdalena.
I must have missed it.
Yeah, they all streamed.
Okay,
I
yeah.
was really curious about what
Yeah.
the cylinder screen.
There we go. Oh, I missed that. Okay, all right, so let's go. Is there any more? Okay, all right, okay, good. Okay, what to compost? Good. All right. So, can you read it okay? Yeah, I'm not going to go through everything, but you can see pretty much everything here. I put tons of eggshells, and it takes a long time for eggshells to break down. And I've read where you can actually put too many eggshells in, but they're really healthy and they're good for your compost. What else we got here? All the basic stuff, pretty much all the fruits and vegetables, even your coffee filters, all that kind of stuff can go in your compost. This time of year, I don't know, my beans, my squash, my cucumbers, everything, they're all ending their lives. And a ton of stuff is going to go in my compost this time of year. And so I can't just throw it all in. I've got to mix it a little bit with some of my food scraps. I don't have any grass right now, so I need some nitrogen to go with all the things that I'm adding right now. But you just keep kind of measuring. Sometimes I'll just set things off to the side and say, I'll wait till I'm ready for it. I don't need it yet. What not to compost? Citrus, onions, I don't know. I put them in mine. People say not to. It's like a lot of things. Just don't do too much of it, but it takes a little longer to break down. And so, heck, I don't know. Definitely no dairy, no fats, no meat or fish. And if you notice, most of the things we say not to compost, not only aren't they good for the compost, they're also the same things that attract all the critters we were talking about earlier. And so if you're doing it correctly, if I go down with a big bucket of food scraps, I just can't throw it in there and walk away. I'm inviting all my neighborhood mice and rats and raccoons and everybody in the neighborhood to come to my compost. So I always cover it up with something. I have to have something else to go, because I don't want to, if you have flies or bugs around there, you're not doing it right. And the food by itself is not enough. You have to mix it with some carbon. So it says animal feces. They're talking about your dog, cat waste, but manure, is there manure, what to compost? Yeah, manure is great stuff. If you have any animals, if you've got horses or sheep or anything, I used to live in the country and I had to compost because we had so much stuff. We didn't even have garbage service, so you didn't have any choice but to compost. Okay. I know you guys have a lot of questions, and we'll skip real fast here and get to that part. So now, not everybody can have 2 bins like I have. Personally, I like that. I think that's the ideal setup, but only if you have a lot of stuff to put in the compost. You might live in an apartment, you might live in a mobile home, you may not have there's all kinds of options in terms of different kinds of compost bins. So I took a picture of this one. I've got some literature on the table over here too. This unit only costs like $50 online. And they're interesting because it's a few feet tall, give you some idea, but you put everything on the top, just feed it, and you just keep feeding and feeding. And one of the great things about a compost is like you go down and you feed it, and a week later you come back, and it's already gone down another foot. And you feed it again, and it keeps going down and down because it's composting down at the bottom. And so when I turn my compost, the good stuff on the bottom now is going on the top. And so the weight of the good stuff is making the stuff on the bottom compost even faster. And so what happens, you pull the bottom here, and you take the good stuff out the bottom, and you just keep feeding, and there's a circular action that goes with it. I've never used one, it makes a lot of sense to me. This is what an old screen I used to use. I don't use it anymore, but a lot of people will screen, and that's fine. I showed this only because if you want to start really simple, the city of Ashland used to give these out back in the pre-corporate days of waste haulers, where we had a local garbage company here that was family run, and they were part of the community. They wanted to work with the city to do things, and they gave these out. And I never used mine. This is one that you can see it's never been used, but this is about as simple as it gets. It's the same thing with just a little while. You can do this, and this will work. It doesn't have to be anything more. That's how simple it can be. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. I'm not going to get into all the different kinds of compost bins and units, but let's see what we got else here.
Yeah, we have a few more slides to go.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah. We're not going to get into this right now. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Would have been nice if I'd seen these before, huh? Okay. Oh, good. Hang on one second here. Let's just go. So, okay. They make all kinds of things now. They make little units that go on your countertop. I think, oh my gosh, what's one called? There's different brands, but it doesn't look a little bit bigger than this can here, but they're basically dehydrators. Well, they dry this up, they grind it up, and a little kind of a donut comes out the bottom, okay? And it comes with a little packet. You put it in the packet and you mail it back to these people, and somewhere in Indiana, I think, and they feed it to chickens. That's the extreme, but I'm saying if you really don't want to get involved with all the messy stuff and everything, there's all kinds of things. Starting with something that small, there's all kinds of smaller units that you can crank, and you don't have to turn, but you just turn this thing over and they work really great. If you go online, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of different variations on composting bins without getting into the size that I was showing you about. What else? Yeah, this one brand is called The Mill. We actually looked into it locally here to see if it was practical. There's a number of things like that now where you ship things back somewhere else, and it becomes kind of questionable in terms of the energy footprint. But yeah, sometimes the word convenience becomes almost the dirtiest word in our vocabulary. But I learned a new word from Eric Arnmark, Brian was talking about earlier, and it's a legal term. And it's called putritables, and it's actually what we're talking about is food waste. And from a waste hauler's standpoint, anything that can become putrid requires separate handling. And so it's a really big deal for them to pick up food waste scraps. And that's why it's so important that if we can, if it's possible, and it's not possible for everybody, but if it's possible, that we try and compost on our own. If it's not possible, then go back to all the various services that are available here in Ashland. There for a while, Shopping Cart was selling some compost that came from Eugene, and it was made from food scraps. And there's a company called Rexius outside of Eugene. It's a custom soils company. It's a huge operation. And they take all the food scraps from Eugene. And Eugene has multiple waste haulers, but most of it goes there. Recology actually also owns a composting facility up there too. And just so you know what it looks like, is these places have giant windrows of miles and miles of compost. And they're continually spraying it and turning it. And first they grind it up. And that's the kind of stuff you go out and buy. And when I mentioned grinding, I forgot to say one thing that I do kind of religiously with my compost, is I keep a shovel down by my compost bin. And I go out there and I beat the heck out of that stuff every few days. Because all the stuff I'm throwing in there, like right now I'm putting all my old sunflowers, they're just, big stems. If I leave it there, it's gonna break down, but it's gonna take a long time. If I can break it up a little bit, it's gonna break down even faster. So the smaller you can make it, obviously the faster it's gonna go. Okay, let's go to the good part. Let's try some questions. I know you had a question, sir, go for it. Yeah.
Well, no, my problem is I've composted in the past in Southern California. It's been easy. But here I was just worried about rodents and bears and stuff like that. I just live a couple blocks away.
Mhm.
And I always hear in the alley close to my house, I always hear the bears emptying the garbage cans, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if they would come over the fence and into the compost pile.
Yeah. And again, my answer to that is if you don't have any meat and dairy products in there,
I'm a vegetarian, so this is gonna be all.
great. So, but the big part is when you do put food waste in it, that you somehow cover it up and at least keep the smell from attracting
So
too
you
much.
just put leaves and stuff on top of it.
Yeah, I've never had, I don't live too far from here either, and I've never had an issue with bears. Definitely raccoons, they try, and raccoons are smart. I mean, I had a rat just eat through into the compost one time. But that was my own fault because I left too much food in there, and didn't cover it up very well. But yeah, if you ever want to be intimidated, try messing with raccoons because they're arguably smarter than humans. But anyway, any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Talk about like your yard, grass clippings and stuff, a really weedy yard,
Mhm.
and specifically the foxtail.
Mhm.
I'm always concerned if if I put that in there, then it's just gonna be full of those seeds.
Yeah.
Do you just kind of leave that stuff out?
Yeah, I've got crabgrass. It's just as bad. And it's, I used to think, well, what it comes down to is if you do it right and you get the temperature right, so most of the time your compost bin is going to get up to like 130 degrees. Stick your hand down in the middle there. It's actually really hot. If it gets hot enough, it's going to kill all the weed seeds. It's a little bit like, I don't know, I always talk about, double digging, single digging, no dig. If you're all gardeners here, you know what I'm talking about. But if you do it right, you don't have to worry about it. If you don't do it right, you're going to get some weeds growing up when you use that compost. I haven't had an issue, and I worry because crabgrass is like the world's worst thing in the world, and I put it all in there and don't have any problem. Sure.
Does that mean sunlight is important for the composting?
Sunlight? No. Air is. And so what I do is, if you remember that one picture, I have a cover on my first bin. And so my first bin is the one that I'm working on currently. And the cover is mainly to keep critters out, but also it helps hold the heat in. The second bin, which is now it's half finished compost, I have a rubber cover it's a piece of, rubber. It actually we built a bunch of bins down at North Mountain Park years ago, and somebody had all this rubber donated, and we used them, instead of putting a lid on it, we just covered it with these pieces of rubber. But no, the sun's not, in fact, if anything, the sun would probably dry it out faster. And so maybe I didn't emphasize enough, I have to go down there and water my compost regularly. I don't do it very often, and that's another reason it takes so long. And the idea is to get it wet enough to where it's kind of like a wet sponge, not real damp, but just damp. Yeah, sure.
My sister, a few years ago, used to say, never to use oak leaves. And recently, my brother-in-law has been mowing them into small pieces, and just putting just that into a bin.
Uh-huh.
And they say that it makes wonderful compost.
True. I never use oak leaves because they take so long to break down.
Yeah.
I never use, walnut, black walnut leaves either. And then another one of those things, and people, the different takes on it. But I've always been taught that black walnut leaves have toxins in them, and if you use it in your garden, they'll help kill your plants. So, but I've read other opinions, and again, if your compost gets hot enough, even the black walnut leaves are okay. Oak leaves, I have a friend who every year he's got giant oak trees. He wants to dump all these. I said they take 3-4 times as long as all the other leaves to break down. But mowing them up is a great idea, and I try and do that with the few leaves that I have. I try and mow up when I can, because that just speeds the whole process up. Yeah. So, sure.
Excuse me. I've had an extensive experience composting, also farming in Hawaii. Anyways, with oak leaves, you need to have like a really large pile that gets like super hot, like 150 degrees, and turn it a number of times.
Yeah.
And then once you get it broken down partially, then you run the valve.
Yeah.
If you're in a slow, slow heat, small pile, then it's a easy valve.
I think what you're saying, it kind of applies to a lot of stuff with composting. Is like I tried to say at the beginning, it's just a matter how long you're willing to wait, for your compost, right? Yeah, Brian?
Are walnut leaves okay or not?
I don't use them. I mean black walnuts, and we have a ton of them here in Ashland, and I don't use them. I don't see any reason to take a chance on my garden. But I've read where a lot of people say it's no big deal. But you know what happens? You go online nowadays, you get, no matter what you look for, there's going to be two sides to it all. And so, but I've always been taught no black walnut. Yeah. So I'm curious, how many people here tonight are composting now at all? Good. Okay, great. Hey, yeah. And so for those of you who are just contemplating the possibility, I suggest go online, go down to Ace Hardware. They actually have a couple different units down there. They're smaller units that have cranks and all this stuff. But go online and just take a look at all the different kind of things that are available, and just start with a small unit at home and see if you want to get into it or not, and give it a go. Hey, it's yours.
All right. Yes. Cool. Thank you. So I wanted to back up a little bit and just go over the worm part really quick, in case some of you were saying, oh, I hope we're going to learn about worms. So they're very effective. They can eat half their weight. And if it's done right, and they definitely need a little bit more attention and work, because these are live critters. And if they don't have a good environment, then they might escape, which is a problem in itself, or, especially if you're doing indoor worm composting, or they may all die, which is sad. This is, okay, I'm going the wrong direction. This is a diagram for the right parts. So these are the important parts: that you have air vents, that you have a cover, that you have some drainage ability, because if it gets too moist, that becomes problematic for them, and that you have the right blend of materials. So they call it bedding, which is the shredded newspapers, and regular dirt, and then the food scraps is their food. So they love all of that good stuff, and it really does come out great. The compost tea needs to be diluted a little bit. I think if you put it on full strength, it's not good for your plants. And then I just wanted to talk about our two services for Community Compost Coalition. Adam Holtai, he's been doing this since 2012, and he's the one who services the Ashland Growers Market. And Magdalena Winter here tonight, she is doing bokashi composting, and she has her own compost drop site that's open 24/7, and it's subscription-based. And she's been doing this since 2022 here. And so we have dreams of expanding operations in the coming years. And so we want more people to be part of this. And so I just want to stand back and say what we're learning about community compost can be applied to our local economy in general. If you define what your space is, like Rogue Valley, and minimize how much is coming in and how much is going out, the resources of the Rogue Valley, we try and produce as much here locally as we can. And these are all the things that we would have a thriving economy if we focused on these things. And only buy imported when there's no local alternative. So, and support small businesses that do any of these things. So we're a good example of a small business that is working at this level. And then, teaching ecology to economics students and the other way around, because there's a lot of parallels there. And I learned that from attending a SOCAN lecture earlier this year. And so the point that Daniel told this story about the little parcel, according to Capital One Shopping, in 2024, we received enough parcels to have 66 delivered to each person in the United States for the whole year. So, I'm not sure exactly how they're counting that, all shipments coming from China, or just to small businesses and households, or just to households. But even so, that's a lot of deliveries per person every year. So we could do better on that respect as well. And then I just wanted to say that our Community Compost Coalition has tangible results here. Magdalena and her partner are delivering good compost to Ashland High School for their project. And then, and that was covered by the County Soil and Water Conservation District newsletter. And then on the right, Adam is delivering bins on his route, and that was covered in by Roman Battaglia in Jefferson Public Radio. So what we've done just since 2022, we've been at the growers market. We've developed neighborhood drop sites, community events, and commercial pickups, and we're doing these presentations and tabling whenever we get a chance, and we're also tracking our progress. And we're collaborating with other organizations as well. So I did want to put this in about Ashland's community gardens because I was curious. It is part of the Climate and Energy Action Plan, and so I just wanted to give you this information that there are 4 community gardens, and when a plot gets abandoned, then if there is somebody that can take it over, then that produce will go to the food bank. And it can become a very social endeavor with potlucks and people putting in community volunteer hours to help it improve and stay vital. And then there is a waiting list for the biggest one, which is the Ashland Creek Community Garden, which is close to the dog park over there. So it's 7:30. This is my conclusion page. Pretty good timing, huh? A strong connection to the local food system is better for both urban and local farms. And we can create a system that works great for everyone, that supports local farmers, protects natural resources, and reduces waste. We can, as individuals, we could work better together and have a larger collective impact. And managing food waste, you could save up to $1,800 a year. This is a quote that's very commonly quoted by the EPA and other agencies. And it's not just in production and consumption, it's all parts of the family. of the food system. So that's it. And if you have any questions, and I'll say my thank you at this point in time.